What more do you want from me? I genuinely support farmers. I can't, the amount of times I've said in the video, I genuinely support farmers, and I think farmers get a really shit deal, right? A really shit deal from supermarkets, from fast food chains, from the supply chain in general. I really do. And if farmers took to the streets tomorrow to protest the big corporations, I would be there with me flat cap on and me banner. I really would. Hi folks, how you doing? I hope you're all keeping well. Big thank you to everyone who's commented, liked and shared the videos about farming, and all my videos actually, over the last few weeks and months. Really appreciate it. I think it's been quite a nice debate to have, and it's been interesting, and it's been a learning curve. And as I've said in many videos before this, but a few people clearly don't actually watch the videos because I've been accused of all sorts. I do support farmers. It's just I don't necessarily agree with some of the arguments they're coming out with regarding inheritance tax. I've always supported farmers, and I know a lot of people saying, oh, you city dwellers, you know nothing. Once again, I don't live in a city. Never have. So yeah, there's a couple of things I've made some notes that I want to talk about, because well, there was one person's comments in particular, and it's not about naming and shaming and not about running this person down, nothing like that, but they put some interesting points across, and I want to address them, because to me they didn't really make much sense. But if I'm wrong on this, then please comment below, and if you think I'm right on this, and also please comment below, because I want to learn. I do want to learn. I would love to be a farmer. I really would. It's been an ambition of mine for some times, and actually some of the comments said, oh, you're just jealous. You're just jealous because you haven't got a farm and we have. And it's like, well, it's not really about jealous. Am I envious? Yeah, of course I'm envious. Of course I'm envious of anyone that inherits a farm and gets it tax-free. Who wouldn't be envious of that? From someone who doesn't own property of themselves, it would be amazing to inherit a farm, I personally believe. So yeah, of course I'm envious of that. But it doesn't mean that just because I'm envious of farmers that they still shouldn't live by the same rules, regulations, and pay the same tax as the rest of us, in my opinion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a few points, and please, again, if you think I'm wrong, let me know. So one comment in particular that cropped up, and also I've heard other people say similar, but this person basically said that a friend of theirs inherited a 600-acre farm and they barely make £15,000 a year from it, and they're struggling. Now I put a comment back, and yes, you might say it was flippant, but I didn't mean it in a flippant way. It's probably just my personality. I said that basically, if you inherit a 600-acre farm and you're struggling to make a living, maybe farming's not for you. It's a long pause there because I can hear the keys being mashed by people who are angry now, angrily replying to that. But please, before you comment, hear me out. Now, where I live, a 600-acre farm would probably cost, I don't know, anywhere between maybe 3 and 9 million quid, I'd say, depends on the house there. So for the purposes of this exercise, and it's purely an exercise, and we're going to go through some math and we're going to figure it out for ourselves, we're going to say that this 600-acre farm had a 4-bedroom house that came with it, because most farms come in a house. We know some of them are big stately homes and mansions, but a lot of farms are just little farm cottages. When I say little, they're bigger than most people's houses, but 4 or 5-bedroom farm cottages, fairly modest for farms. So we're going to pretend that our imaginary farm is a 4-bedroom farm with 600 acres. Okay, so you've inherited this £5 million 600-acre farm with a modest 4-bedroom house, and apparently you're struggling to make £15,000 a year from that farm. Now that sounds really harsh, doesn't it? That sounds like, how the hell do you get by on £15,000 running a farm? But there's a few things that I want to talk about. Now, I'm a bit of a prepper. I'm a bit of a self-sufficiency nut. I'm not self-sufficient, but I read lots of books. John Seymour, Hugh Richards. I'm big on the idea. As you know, I've got allotments. I like growing food. And so I don't understand, and please tell me if I'm wrong, how you can inherit a 600-acre farm and struggle to make a living from it. And now I'm not, this person might be a dairy farmer and they're getting shafted by the supermarket for their milk. And I completely understand that, and that's wrong. And the supermarkets, that's who I really wish those farmers would protest. But just because you inherit a 600-acre dairy farm, let's say, in my naive non-farmer view, that doesn't mean that you have to be a dairy farmer. Just because your dad, let's say, was a dairy farmer, doesn't mean you have to be a dairy farmer. I get that not all farms are geared up for all different elements. You can't just plough any field and plant something in it. You know, there's lots of things to do. But you inherited tax-free a 600-acre farm, let's say with a 4-bedroom house. You're struggling to make £15,000. Now, here's a few little things I've gone through on. The average UK salary is £30,000, right? So that roughly. So that salary of £15,000 for a farmer on 600 acres, that's ridiculously low, isn't it? And we can all agree that farmers should be paid a lot more. But here's a few caveats to that. Now, heating a 4-bedroom house costs me, with my gas bill and other people who don't have farms, about £2,700 a year. Now, if you had 600 acres of land, I pretty much guarantee that there'd be some trees there. And if there weren't trees there, why can't you plant willow and hazel and coppice it for firewood? Get yourself a biomass boiler or a log burner in various rooms of the house, and you can really cut down on your heating bill because you're essentially growing your own sustainable fuel. If I inherited a 600-acre farm, one of the first things I would do was make sure I had a fuel supply there, and I'd probably do that by planting hazel, willow, and other coppiceable trees that I could then use to heat my home. And that would save me £2,700 a year on current rates. Also, food. The average UK household spends about £4,500 a year on food. Now, I've said often in my videos about my allotment that just on my allotment alone, I put between £1,000 and maybe £5,000 worth of food through my kitchen every year, depending on what season it is. Now, if you've got a 600-acre farm, then surely you're also living off the land too. You can have a vegetable garden. If you grow potatoes, you can take some of the potatoes for yourself. If you grow cows, I'm sure you've got plenty of beef in the freezer. So really and truthfully, if you've got a 600-acre farm, you should, with good management, be able to sort out your heating and your food with 600 acres. I'm struggling to see how you can't do that. I mean, the people I know who do self-sufficiency and the people who write books and talk about self-sufficiency say how you can actually be self-sufficient on half an acre. Now, if you've got 600 acres, that should make it a damn sight easier making yourself self-sufficient and then reducing your bills. Also, I want to talk about water. Now, if you've inherited a family farm, the chances are that it's been in your family for several generations. I imagine if there is a borehole nearby, your family have tapped into that to get access to free or cheaper water. Obviously, boreholes need to be maintained, pumps and everything else. Nothing's really free in this world, okay? But the average UK water bill is £300. Now, if you've got a well, and I know a farm not far from me, who the old man told me many years ago how he tapped into a borehole in the middle of a town so he could get away with not having to pay any water rates. So that's another saving of £300 a year. But then also, the average mortgage in the UK is about £1,200 a month. That's £14,400 a year. You've inherited a 600-acre farm with a 4-bedroom house. If you've inherited it, there is no mortgage on it. And I imagine that when your father inherited it, there was no mortgage on it. When your grandfather inherited it, there was no mortgage on it. So if you're not paying mortgage, heating costs, food costs and water costs, or if those costs are dramatically reduced, then your £15,000 salary doesn't look too bad after all. The average UK salary is £30,000. But with all those savings I've just told you, including the £15,000 that person's struggling to make from the farm, that would give you a net saving, let's say, that would give you a money coming into your household and savings equivalent to £36,900. This is all based on UK averages. So you're growing your own wood on your farm and you're putting it in your log burner, and that's massively reducing your heating bill. You're growing your own food and that's massively reducing your shopping bill. You've got your own borehole and that's reducing your water costs, and you inherited the farm, which means you've got no mortgage. That's £21,900 worth of savings just because you have 600 acres if you manage it correctly. Am I being naive? Please tell me, am I being naive? Because I'm thinking if I inherited a 600 acre farm, I'm pretty sure, and if anyone wants to lend me a 600 acre farm for 20 years, I'm pretty sure that I'd not only be quids in, and when I mean quids in, I don't mean mega rich, but I mean I'd feel safe and I'd sleep well at night knowing that there's food in the fridge, you know, there's a heat in the fire and there's a roof over my head, and I've got 600 acres of land to do whatever I want with within reason. So when people say farming doesn't work like that, there's no value in 600 acres. 600 acres you can barely make 15 grand on it. But one, farmers always say it's a lifestyle, which is fair enough, it is a lifestyle. And two, there's a lot of farm savings that can be made because you've got land and the rest of us haven't. I can't plant trees and then coppice them to make my own fuel because I don't have the land. I can't drill into the ground and access a borehole to get water because I don't have the land. I haven't inherited a 4-bedroom farm cottage, so I have to pay rent or mortgage. That's where the value is. And this is why I can't understand people who say, oh, 3, 4, 5, 600 acre farms aren't viable. People are barely making 15 grand off them. Yeah, I get it, but there's a hell of a lot of savings there as well from just having a farm if you manage it correctly. And I go back to my previous point, which is probably going to completely rile this person again. If you inherit a 600 acre farm and you are struggling to make a living on it, maybe farming's not for you. So I'm sure that's going to kick the hornet's nest. It really is. And I'm sure people are already mashing the keyboard with angry responses. But genuinely, please tell me where I'm wrong with these figures. Please, I get there's taxes, I get there's other things involved, but there's some of the comments make out like inheriting 600 acre farm was like a really bad thing, like you don't want to do it. And if that's the case, why are so many people wanting to get into farming or want to stay in farming? Why do so many families going on about if it's been a family farm for several generations? If it's been a family farm for several generations and you haven't got a wood to coppice for your fuel and you haven't got a borehole drilled and you haven't got a veg garden that's producing, then maybe, you know, dig up your ancestors and have a word with them and ask them why they didn't put all these things in place. Okay, that's a joke. That's a joke. No one get digging up any ancestors, all right? Some of the comments also were very strange, right? And these are the people that are probably now going to mash the keyboard in anger. One person said the fact that because I hadn't mentioned the rise in farm suicides, then obviously I didn't care about farmers. I didn't mention the earth was a globe. It doesn't make me a flat earther, does it? I mean, come on, what more do you want from me? I genuinely support farmers. The amount of times I've said in the video, I genuinely support farmers, and I think farmers get a really shit deal, right? A really shit deal from supermarkets, from fast food chains, from the supply chain in general. I really do. And if farmers took to the streets tomorrow to protest the big corporations, I would be there with me flat cap on and me banner. I really would. But on the subject of inheritance tax, and some farmers, some, not all, who are pleading poverty and complaining about inheriting 600 acre farms, I'm sorry. I'm not going to say I have little sympathy, because I have sympathy for anyone who's struggling, regardless if you've put yourself in there or if you've found yourself in a bad situation. I think that's just my nature. But come on, you've inherited a 600 acre farm. You can't be miserable about that. 600 acre farm. Please. That will put you in I think that'll put you in one of the top 5% of biggest farms in the country. I think the average farm size is 250 acres. Wow, come on, please. Let's engage our brains on this. A 600 acre farm is a hell of a lot of land, and it's a fantastic business opportunity for a family. So I'm just not getting it. I'm really not getting it. And I would really love a farmer to come in the comments and nicely tell me where I'm going wrong on this. So I hope that's explained where I'm coming from a bit better than the last 3 videos. Again, I'm going to say this. I hope this is the last one I make, but when I keep getting angry comments and some things that I just really don't agree with, I feel like I've got to reply to them, because it's just my nature. So anyway, folks, I hope that kind of, I don't know, put some clarity on what I've been trying to say for the last few videos. And yeah, call me envious all you want. I would love a farm, absolutely love a farm. And if anyone out there has a farm that they don't want to inherit, please tell your family they can put me down in the will, and I'll happily inherit it and pay the tax on it. I really would. I wanted to have a farm since I was probably about 15, 16 years old. I planned to work in graphics, earn enough money, and then buy a farm. Life didn't work out like that, and I'm probably never going to have a farm. So, but I find it very difficult when I read these comments and hear these stories of farmers with 300, 400, 500, 600 acres who are pleading poverty, because I think that's an incredibly lucky position to be in if you're inheriting tax-free a 600-acre farm. Anyway, folks, until next time, take care. Speak soon.